Hello guys, and welcome back to our channel. If you haven't yet subscribed, then please do so by simply tapping on the subscribe button. Give our videos a thumbs up by tapping on the like button, and be part of the commenting squad by sharing your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, I welcome you to a conversation that will challenge everything you thought you knew about American history. Today, we're going to explore the shocking truth about Nat Turner, a man who led a rebellion against slavery in 1831. But be warned, the details are disturbing. For centuries, the story of Nat Turner has been shrouded in mystery and controversy. What people were taught in schools was actually a sanitized version of events, omitting the most horrific details, but the truth is far more sinister. Now, according to different people in these videos and historical records, Nat Turner's rebellion was met with brutal force, and he was subjected to unimaginable tea to the char. But that's not all. There are allegations that he was even consumed by his captors, a practice that was allegedly widespread on plantations. Now, the existence of a book called The Delectable Ratios Slayer, a guide to cooking and consuming human flesh, is a reminder of the depths of depravity and cruelty that existed during this period. As we take a look into the dark history shrouding Nat Turner's rebellion, it's important to acknowledge the resilience and strength of those who fought against slavery and oppression. Their stories, though painful and disturbing, must be told to ensure that we never forget the atrocities of the past. So with that said, let's take a look at these videos as different people share more on this. I will be right back.
Date Nat Turner. They would never teach you that part. They what the? And he wasn't the only one. Look it up.
After the execution of Nat Turner on November 11th, 1831, his body was, quote, skinned to supply souvenirs and purses, his flesh made into grease, and his bones divided as trophies to be handed down as heirlooms. This was published by John W. Cronwell in a 1920 article in the Journal of Meat and Plants That Grow History. Moreover, southern states, out of fear, began to pass laws making it illegal for Black people to read and write. It was also forbidden for the enslaved to preach. It was forbidden for them to hunt in the woods, to carry, to live in harmony with free Blacks or whites or even animals, and to be arrogant to whites. However, the revolt contributed to the radicalization of American politics and helped set the United States on its course towards a civil war, which would happen on April 1861 to April 1865. In Virginia, some of the Black people that participated, and even slaves that did not participate, were decapitated and their heads were put. So apparently there's a part of the Virginia State Highway, Route 658, that's called Blackhead Signpost Road. This obviously sent a message during that time that if you revolt, this is what happens to you. It looks like back in 2021, they actually renamed the post and dedicated it to Nat Turner. But it's even disgusting that it just happened in 2021, y'all. Like, wrap your head around that. Taking Nat Turner's body and making the fat of his body into grease and taking his skin and making it into purses. They were trying to send a message in the most brutal way possible. However, Virginia did actually have a debate about what they wanted to do post-rebellion. They even thought about abolishing slavery altogether. Of course, they did not. However, one of the most notable people in history that were fighting to abolish slavery was Thomas Jefferson's grandson, Thomas Jefferson Randolph. He argued for the gradual emancipation of slaves because at this point, the South was very scared. It was white fear, y'all, and that's why they were slaves that literally had nothing to do with it. Cuban slaves that were all the way in North Carolina claiming that they were a part of the revolution. They were a part of the revolt. They were working with Nat Turner. And of course, slavery did not get abolished. What they did was enforce even more slave codes. And that includes a police bill that was passed that forbade any Black people from having a jury, whether you were free or not. And if you were a free Black person at the time and you got convicted of a crime, you could be sold back into slavery. As I've stated before, education bills were passed, so it will make it illegal for slaves to read and write and make it illegal for white people to teach them how to read and write. But I didn't mention in my previous videos that at 22 years old, Nat Turner actually escaped slavery. The only reason why he returned is because he had a vision that he thought was a message from God, and that it told him he had to turn back and set his people free. And that's when he begins expanding his religious teachings among slaves once he returns. Nat Turner's rebellion significantly influenced the abolitionist movement of the United States. And also, it increased the number of slave revolts that were being saw in the South. So that lie that they tell you in school that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, no, we freed ourselves. They were afraid of us like they are now. And they had no choice because so many enslaved people saw Nat Turner's actions as a symbol of resistance against their oppressor. And that's exactly how you should see it today, because you're still in chains. They're just invisible.
Sure enough did. And any other slaves did. And the mummies. Yeah, they thought it was for medicinal use. I pray that they got better sense now. Wouldn't put nothing past anybody, but yeah, that was the past, I guess. I won't even say sorry or pay us reparations for eating our ancestors. Isn't that funny? So the ones who's wondering why there's a problem with CRT, why they won't teach it, because the truth is ain't it.
So apparently there was a book on how to cook black people. The book is called The Delectable. So yeah. Nat Turner is one of my ancestors, closely related to Nat Turner, great grandparent. So when I hear about books like this and I hear that he was eaten and that wasn't taught, so you gotta figure out things on your own. But yeah, it's just like,
I saw a video earlier today that I want y'all to know is that they was eating Nat Turner. First of all, that's nasty. And they was doing all kind of stuff when they unalived that man. So we all know that they skinned him and did who knows what with his remains and stuff. Keeping bones, passing them down, keeping the skin, making purses and stuff. I wants to know which one of y'all mamaws and papaws got family heirlooms of stuff that's made out of Nat Turner skin that y'all passing down to y'all family. Because I know some of y'all white people got some of that stuff. It ain't in no goddamn museums. Y'all got that stuff at your homes and y'all bringing it out. This was your great grandpappy's. His father took this from Nat Turner's skin himself and made a belt out of it. And I'm passing this down to you. I know y'all white people be on some crazy, because I know. I ain't see that in the African American Museum. So I know y'all passing it down as heirlooms.
So this is on National Geographic. How did the skull of a man born into slavery in Virginia wind up in Gary, Indiana? Fun fact, I'm from East Chicago, Indiana, which is literally right next door. But yeah, so in 2016, the first black mayor was like, yeah, the skull up in there. And then, this was how they got it. Albert Gallatin Franklin, a physician in Richmond, Virginia, around 1900, by a female patient who inherited from her father, one of the doctors who handled Turner's body after he viewed it. And then, they go on to say some other stuff. But yeah, hey. And then this is the dude, Richard Hatcher, the first black mayor of Gary, Indiana, came into possession of the alleged skull in 2002. 2002. So yeah, when I heard that, I was like, the men who had a rebellion, his remains in Gary, Indiana. Let's just face it. The one thing people know about Gary, Indiana, as far as Indiana goes, heavily populated by black people. So I was just like, that's ironic. That's very ironic. And we're so close to Chicago. Like, that was So I just thought, I share that with y'all. Because when I heard it, I was like in utter disbelief. And let me just start by saying allegedly, because that was in 2016 and I was trying to look for it to see, like, had the DNA been done? Is it his? You know what I mean? So I'm going to say allegedly. Allegedly, Nat Turner's skull was found in Gary, Indiana in 2002 and had been in the mayoral office since Gary was founded. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Now, according to research, in the early hours of August 22, 1831, a slave named Nat Turner laid more than 50 followers in a bloody revolt in Southampton, Virginia, unaliving nearly 60 Pamcala people, mostly women and children. The local authorities stopped the uprising by dawn the next day. They captured or unalived most of the insurgents, although Turner himself managed to avoid capture for 60 days. Now, even though Turner and his followers had been stopped, panic spread across the region. In the days following the attack, 3,000 soldiers, militiamen, and vigilantes unalived more than 100 suspected rebels. In a letter written a month later from North Carolina, Nelson Allen described the retaliation against African Americans. 19 of the 30 who had been arrested were convicted and executed. The rest, along with 300 free blacks from Southampton County, agreed to be exiled to Liberia in Africa. Turner was executed on November 11, 1831. Now, Nat Turner's rebellion led to the passage of a series of new laws. The Virginia legislature actually debated ending slavery, but chose instead to impose additional restrictions and harsher penalties on the activities of both enslaved and free African Americans. Other slave states followed suit, restricting the rights of free and enslaved blacks to gather in groups, travel, preach, and learn to read and write. Now, most people do not readily associate Nat Turner, the heroic figure and slave insurrectionist, with the themes of auto-cannibalism, self-consumption, Pamcala male consumptive desires, or homoeroticism. Now, these themes, however, strongly informed how Southampton, Virginia, Pamcala people punished Turner and treated his corpse after his public unaliving. In the 19th century, the Pamcala press throughout the country reported that Turner had sold his body for dissection and spent the money on ginger cakes. Many papers reported that Turner feasted on these sweet ginger cakes before his own execution. Now, this was an erroneous assertion, as slaves did not own themselves and therefore had no agency to barter and trade in their own flesh. More than anything, this ginger case story reflected the psychology of Pamcala people who needed to convince themselves that black men such as Turner somehow consented to and were complicit in their social consumption. Now, this linking of consent to black self-consumption was a common idea that found its way into unaliving ritual practices in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In 1934, Pamcala people met Claude Neal, whom they unalived in Jackson County, Florida. His cut of P&Ts. James McGovern relates the details of the new unaliving in Anatomy of an Unaliving. After taking the black person to the woods about 4 miles from Greenwood, they cut off his private parts. He was made to eat them. Then they cut off his teeth as well and made him eat them and say he liked it. Now, Claude Neal's story is indeed one of the most horrific examples of racial violence and brutality in American history. The level of cruelty and sadism exhibited by his tormentors is simply staggering. The fact that a mob of people could gather to watch and participate in such a heinous act, including mutilation and forced cannibalism, is a stark reminder of the depths of depravity and inhumanity that can exist in society. Like the horrific treatment of Claude Neal and countless others during the era of racial terror in the United States, serves as a painful reminder of the ongoing struggle for racial justice and equality. Now, scholars of U.S. and transatlantic slavery have largely ignored or dismissed accusations that Black Americans were cannibalized. Vincent Woodard takes the enslaved person's claims of human consumption seriously, focusing on both the literal starvation of the slave and the tropes of cannibalism on the part of the slaveholder, and further draws attention to the ways in which Blacks experience their consumption as a fundamentally homoerotic occurrence. The delectable racial slur explores these connections between homoeroticism, cannibalism, and cultures of consumption in the context of American literature and U.S. slave culture. Now, utilizing many staples of African American literature and culture, such as the slave narratives of Oloda Equino, Harriet Jacobs, and Frederick Douglass, as well as other less circulated materials like James L. Smith's slave narrative, runaway slave advertisements, and numerous articles from Black newspapers published in the 19th century, Woodard traces the racial assumptions, political aspirations, gender codes, and philosophical frameworks that dictated both European and Pamkala American arousal towards black males and hunger for black male flesh. Now, Woodard uses these texts to unpack how slaves struggled not only against social consumption, but also against endemic mechanisms of starvation and hunger designed to break them. Now, he concludes with an examination of the controversial chain gang, Oro S scene in Toni Morrison's Beloved, suggesting that even at the end of the 20th and beginning of the 21st century, we are still at a loss for language with which to describe black male hunger within a plantation culture of consumption. We have finally come to the end of the video, but what do you, our viewers, have to say? Share your thoughts, your views, your contributions, and what you know about Nat Turner's story and many more others. Was he really eaten? Share your views, your thoughts on this in the comment section, and let's have a conversation there. Thank you for always watching, and see you in our next video as we bring you another video.